Out of all the 5 points of Calvinism, this one tends to land the hardest in conversation. You tell someone that human beings are totally depraved, and the reaction you get is almost always the same. That's ridiculous. Now, look at all the good people in the world. Look at all the parents that sacrifice everything they have for their children. Look at the first responders running into burning buildings. Are you really telling me that those people are totally depraved? So, look, if that's how you're hearing this doctrine, as a claim that human beings are incapable of kindness, incapable of courage, incapable of genuine love for other people, then your objection is completely reasonable. But that's not what total depravity means. And the gap between what it actually means and what most people think it means is exactly where this doctrine goes wrong in almost every conversation it shows up in. So let's fix that right now. Now, total depravity is not a claim about the degree of sin in every individual human being. It is a claim about the extent of sin's reach within the person. The word total does not mean as bad as possible. It means across the whole. See, sin has not just touched the surface of what we are. It has penetrated every dimension: our intellect, our will, our emotion, our desires, our conscience, and our relationship with God. There is no part of the human person that sin has left untouched and neutral. That is what total means. So here's the thing. Reformed theology draws a distinction here between what are called common grace and saving grace. Common grace is the grace that God extends to all people, believer and unbeliever alike. This grace restrains sins, enables genuine human kindness, and allows people to do things that are genuinely good by human standards. That is why the world is not as bad as it could be. That is why they are genuinely kind, generous, loving people who do not know Christ. Common grace is real, and Calvinism has always affirmed it. But common grace does not fix the fundamental problem, which is not a behavior problem, but a relational one. The problem is not primarily that we do bad things. The problem is that by nature, we are oriented away from God and incapable of reorienting ourselves. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know? That's Jeremiah 17:9. That verse is not describing serial criminals. It is describing the human heart as a category. My heart, your heart, the heart of the most outwardly moral person you know. Deceitful above all things, desperately wicked. And the question at the end, who can know it? That is pointing to the fact that the corruption of the human heart runs deeper than even the persons carrying it fully perceive. Now, Jesus himself makes this interior diagnosis in Mark 7, and I want you to read this carefully. For from within, out of the heart of men, proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornication, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. All these evil things comes within and defile a man. From within, the problem is not external. It is not environmental. It is not education. The root is from within, and that's the key. This is why total depravity is the first of the 5 points. Now, every other point depends upon it. If you do not start with an accurate diagnosis of the human condition, you will build your entire understanding of salvation on the foundation that cannot stand. Alright, with that, here's the thing that most people never get to because they are too busy arguing about whether this doctrine is too harsh. If total depravity is true, if every human being is by nature oriented away from God, incapable of seeking Him or choosing Him on their own, then what does that tell us about anyone who does see God, about anyone who does come to faith? It tells us that something happened to them that did not originate in them. It tells us that the very desire they felt, the very faith they are exercising, the very repentance they experience, none of it comes from within their own natural corrupted heart. It came from outside, which means it came from God. No one comes to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise them up in the last day. That is John 6:44. No one can come to me unless the Father draws. That is not a verse about God making salvation generally available and waiting to see who responds. That is a verse about a specific, sovereign, effective drawing, a drawing that results in a person's coming. See, total depravity is the reason that verse has to say what it says, and that's the key. This is where total depravity stops being a depressing doctrine and starts being a liberating one, because it removes the last place where pride can hide in our salvation. You cannot take credit for seeking God. You cannot look back at your conversion and say, I made the right call. But rather, what you can say, what the doctrine forces you to say, is that something happened to me that I did not produce in myself. And that something is grace. This is what it says in Ezekiel 36:26. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. A new heart, given, not grown, not chosen, not worked up through sufficient religious effort. It was given by God to people who had hearts of stone and had no capacity to turn them soft on their own. That is the gospel of total depravity. Not you are so bad and you are beyond hope, but rather you are so unable that God had to do everything, and He did. Now, if God is the one who does everything, if He is the one that removes the heart of stone and gives the heart of flesh, then the next question is, does He do this for everyone? And if not, on what basis does He choose who receives it? That is the second point to the tulip. But before you go there, make sure you have watched our previous video, what is Calvinism and why do people get so angry about it? Because understanding the historical context is going to help everything that follows land the way it should. So the next video is on conditional election, and now that you understand total depravity, I think it's going to hit very differently than it would have before. I'll see you there.